I thought I'd left my old life behind until a racist cop threatened my suburban family and home. That's when I called my president, and the cavalry he brought was nothing anyone in this quiet town expected. The blue and red lights painted the inside of my Escalade, and a familiar knot tightened in my gut. It's a feeling every black man knows, that sudden cold dread when you've done nothing wrong but you're about to have to prove it. I glanced in the rearview mirror. My wife, Lena, had her hand over her mouth, and our 6-year-old daughter, Lily, was frozen in her car seat, her eyes wide. We were 2 blocks from our own driveway. We'd just come from getting ice cream. I pulled over smoothly, killed the engine, and rolled down my window, placing my hands on the steering wheel in plain sight. Standard procedure. The officer who approached my window was a stereotype made flesh. A thick neck, a buzz cut, and a pair of mirrored sunglasses even though the sun had set an hour ago. His name tag read, Miller. "License and registration," he grunted, not as a request, but a demand. "Of course, officer," I said, my voice even. I moved slowly, narrating my actions. Just reaching into the glove compartment now. I handed him the documents. He took them without looking at me, his eyes roaming over the interior of my car, lingering on Lena, then on Lily in the back. A different, uglier knot formed in my stomach. This was about more than a traffic stop. "Broken taillight," he said finally. "Is it? I just had the car serviced last week. I'll be sure to take it back," I replied, keeping the frustration out of my voice. He shone his maglite into my face, then into the car. "This is a nice vehicle. You live around here?" The question was loaded, the insinuation as subtle as a punch to the jaw. We lived in a predominantly white, upper-middle-class suburb. A guy like me, in a car like this, in a neighborhood like this. In his mind, the math didn't add up. "Yes, sir." "Just down the road. My daughter goes to the elementary school on Maple." I was trying to give him anchors, to make us a normal family, not a threat. He ignored me. "I smell marijuana." A chill went down my spine. That was the magic phrase, the skeleton key that let them unlock your life and turn it upside down. "Officer, with all due respect, there is no marijuana in this car. My wife and I don't smoke. My child is in the back seat." "I'm going to need you to step out of the vehicle, sir," Miller said, his hand resting on the butt of his holstered pistol. His partner, a younger, nervous-looking kid, had materialized by the passenger side door, staring at Lena. "Am I being detained?" I asked, my voice still steady, though my heart was hammering against my ribs. "You're being asked to step out of the car. Now." I looked at Lena. Her face was pale with terror. I gave her a small, reassuring nod and did as he asked. I was patted down, thoroughly and aggressively, while Miller's partner kept his eyes locked on my family. They found nothing but my wallet and my phone. "I'm going to search your vehicle," Miller announced. "I do not consent to a search," I stated clearly. "You have no probable cause." A smirk played on Miller's lips. "I have a broken taillight and the smell of marijuana. That's all the cause I need. Or we can do this the hard way. We get a warrant, and while we're at it, we get one for your house, too. We can tear the whole place apart. See what we find. You want your little girl to watch that?" The threat hung in the air, thick and suffocating. He wasn't just coming after me anymore. He was threatening my home, my sanctuary, the place where my daughter slept. All the years I had spent building this life. The legitimate businesses, the clean record, the quiet suburban existence. It was all about to be set on fire over a lie. I had played their game, by their rules, and it meant nothing. He saw my skin, my car, and his mind was made up. I saw the hate in his eyes. It was pure, simple, and terrifying. He wasn't going to stop. He was going to follow through. He was going to traumatize my family just because he could. In that moment, something inside me shifted. The man who owned 3 successful garages and coached his daughter's soccer team receded. Another man, one I kept buried deep, started to surface. The man who understood that some rules are meant to be broken, and some threats need to be met not with compliance but with overwhelming force. Miller pulled out his radio, ready to call it in. "Last chance," he sneered. "Let us search the car, or we bring the whole circus to your front lawn." I slowly reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. Lena's voice was a choked whisper from the car. "Are you calling our lawyer?" I unlocked the screen, my thumb hovering over a single name in my contacts. It wasn't my lawyer. It was a name that belonged to a different world, a different family. A world where a threat against a man's home and child was not met with legal briefs, but with fire and fury. I looked directly into Miller's smug face, a cold calm settling over me. "No," I said, my voice low and devoid of any of the fear I'd felt moments before. "I'm calling my president." Miller let out a short, ugly laugh. "President? President of what? Your fantasy football league?" He gestured with his flashlight. "Phone down. On the hood. Now. You're done playing games." His partner, however, wasn't laughing. He was looking at me, at the dead seriousness in my eyes, and a flicker of doubt crossed his face. But Miller was in charge. I ignored him and pressed the call button. It rang once. A gravelly voice answered, "No hello." "Yeah." "Tiny, it's me," I said, my voice steady, my eyes locked on Miller. "I've got a situation." I could hear the sound of a bar in the background, clinking glasses, distant music. It stopped. "Where?" 2 blocks from home. Maple and 3rd. Officer Miller. Badge 724. "He's threatening my family." I was precise, deliberate. I wanted him to know I wasn't panicked. I was giving an order. 10 minutes, Tiny said, and the line went dead. Miller's face was turning a blotchy red. "You think you're a tough guy? You think some phone call scares me?" He grabbed my arm. "You are obstructing an investigation. You are resisting." That's when we heard it. At first it was just a low hum, a vibration you felt more than heard. It was a sound that didn't belong here, among the manicured lawns and sleeping minivans. It was the sound of distant thunder on a clear night. Miller paused, his hand still clamped on my arm, his head cocked to the side. The younger cop took a step back from my wife's door, looking around nervously. The hum grew into a rumble, then a roar. It wasn't one engine, it was dozens. A synchronized, guttural growl that seemed to make the asphalt tremble. It was getting closer. Fast. "What the hell is that?" Miller muttered, letting go of my arm. I said nothing. I just stood there, by the hood of my Escalade, and waited. Then they came. A wave of single headlights crested the small hill at the end of the street. One by one, they poured onto our quiet suburban road. They weren't speeding. They were rolling slow, deliberate, a procession of chrome and black leather that filled the entire street, curb to curb. Harley-Davidsons mostly. Choppers and Road Kings and Street Glides. They moved with the terrifying grace of a predator pack. They formed a semicircle around us, their headlights pinning the 2 police cars and my Escalade in a brilliant, unwavering glare. The engines dropped to a rumbling idle, a symphony of contained power that vibrated in my chest. There must have been 30 of them, maybe more. On the back of every single leather vest, under the dim streetlights, the same image was starkly visible. The grinning death's head skull, flanked by the words every cop in the country knows and dreads. Hell's Angels. Miller's jaw went slack. The mirrored sunglasses suddenly looked ridiculous, a cheap costume. His partner had his hand on his sidearm, but he looked like he was about to be sick. They were 2 officers on a quiet street, and they were now surrounded by an entire charter of the most notorious motorcycle club in the world. My club. My family. The sea of bikers parted, and one man walked through. He was huge, well over 6'5", with a braided beard that reached his chest and arms covered in a road map of tattoos. He wore a president patch on the front of his cut. This was Tiny. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at my wife or daughter. His eyes, small and hard as ball bearings, fixed on Officer Miller. He stopped about 10 feet away, close enough for Miller to see the road, dust on his boots, and the complete absence of fear on his face. The roar of the idling engines was the only sound. Tiny finally spoke, his voice a low growl that cut through the noise. "Evening, officer. I'm the president," he called. He tilted his head slightly, a gesture that was pure menace. "Now, which one of you was it that threatened my brother's little girl?" The air grew thick and heavy. The collective thrum of 30 V-twin engines was a physical presence, pressing in on us. Miller's Adam's apple bobbed in his throat. His mirrored sunglasses, which had been a tool of intimidation, now seemed to hide a frantic, cornered panic. He couldn't look at Tiny. He couldn't look at me. He looked at his partner. He was being uncooperative, Miller stammered, his voice a squeak. Refused a lawful search of the vehicle. Tiny didn't even blink. He took a slow step forward, the leather of his boots scuffing on the asphalt. We're not talking about the vehicle. We're talking about the little girl. He pointed a thick, tattooed finger toward my Escalade, where Lily was still frozen, watching the whole scene unfold like a surreal movie. Heard you were going to tear up her room. See what you could find. Is that part of a standard traffic stop for a broken taillight these days? The younger cop swallowed hard. I could see the internal war raging on his face. He'd signed up to be a cop, not to be the collateral damage in a feud between a dirty officer and the Hells Angels. He looked from his partner to the wall of bikers, and his choice was made. "He said that, sir," the young cop blurted out, his voice shaking. "He made the threat. I didn't agree with it." Miller's head whipped around to stare at his partner, his face a mask of betrayal and fury. "You shut your mouth, rookie." Before he could say another word, a different sound pierced the air, the sharp chirp of a police radio, but not from Miller's belt. It came from the police cruiser. Then the radio crackled to life, a new voice, calm and authoritative. "Miller, what's your status? I've got a call about a situation at your location." Miller looked completely bewildered. He hadn't called for backup. Tiny, however, allowed himself the faintest of smiles. He'd made 2 calls. The first was to the charter. The second was to the one man in the local PD who owed him a serious favor, the shift sergeant. Headlights appeared at the other end of the street. It was a single patrol SUV, a supervisor's vehicle. It rolled up and parked behind Miller's car. A sergeant, a man with graying temples and a weary look in his eyes, got out. He took in the scene, the wall of bikers, Tiny standing like a monument in the middle of the street, me by my car, and his 2 officers looking like they were about to come apart at the seams. He walked past the bikers, who parted for him silently. He didn't look at Tiny. He looked at me. "Sir, I'm Sergeant Daniels. Is there a problem here?" I finally moved. I walked calmly to the sergeant, my hands in plain view. "Sergeant," I said, my voice as level as a slab of concrete, "your officer Miller pulled me over for a phantom broken taillight. He then claimed to smell marijuana, which was a lie, to manufacture probable cause. When I refused an illegal search, he threatened to get a warrant for my home and traumatize my 6-year-old daughter by tearing it apart in front of her. All of this, I believe, is recorded on his body camera." The sergeant's gaze shifted to Miller. It was a look of pure, unadulterated disappointment and anger. "Miller, hand me your camera and your firearm. Get in my vehicle. Now." Miller stood frozen for a second, his world collapsing. He looked at the bikers, at the sergeant, at me. The smug superiority was gone, replaced by the hollow look of a man who had overplayed his hand and lost everything. He unclipped his gear and did as he was told, not saying a word. The sergeant turned to the young cop. "You stay. You're going to give me a full statement." He then looked at Tiny. There was no animosity, just a weary understanding. A single nod was exchanged. The problem was handled. Tiny turned back to the silent brotherhood. He raised his hand, and like a single organism, 30 engines roared back to life. The sound was deafening, a final thunderous statement. Then, one by one, they peeled off, disappearing back into the night as quickly as they had come. Soon, the street was quiet again. The only lights were the street lamps and the lingering strobes of the police cars. The sergeant came over to me. "Sir, I am sincerely sorry for the actions of my officer. Your license and registration." He handed them back. "Your taillight is fine. You and your family are free to go. We'll handle this internally. I can promise you that." I nodded, took my documents, and got back in my Escalade. I looked at Lena. Tears were silently streaming down her face, a mixture of fear and relief. Lily was just staring at me, her little brow furrowed. I started the car. As I pulled away, Lena finally found her voice, a shaky whisper. I had no idea. You never told me." I reached over and took her hand. It was cold. I looked at her, then into the rearview mirror at my daughter, the two people my two lives were built to protect. "They're family," I said softly. And family shows up. We drove the last 2 blocks in a profound silence, the ice cream melting forgotten in the back. We pulled into our driveway, the garage door rumbling open to welcome us. We were home, we were safe, and nothing would ever be quite the same again.